Good afternoon to everybody on the platform. I just want to apologize for the bit of a delay. As you would know, the House was sitting earlier, and then the chairperson is also attending to another cluster meeting, which was supposed to have finished at 2 o'clock. It's just been dragging a bit, but she should join us in the next few minutes. Thank you for the patience. TG.
Thanks, Chanas. We're here.
As soon as she's on, and then we'll start immediately with the presentation and not the other agenda item as was highlighted in the agenda.
Shanas?
Yes, Ms. Mananiso.
Yeah, I think you can start that process, that in the absence of chairperson, we can start the meeting. Then she would find us on the way. Because seemingly she's not finished with the session that she's been in.
Let's postpone the meeting. Let's postpone the meeting. We've got organizational responsibility. It's election.
We
It's
can
elections.
postpone now.
We want power. I want to win. But let's postpone this meeting.
We're not going to postpone. Shanas, over to you.
Okay, so in terms of the National Assembly rules, we have a quorum here of members. So we allowed to elect a chairperson in the absence of our chairperson. So without going into all the detail of the election of the chair, I would now want to open the floor for members to propose one of the members to chair the meeting in the interim. The chair will join us shortly, but just so that we can progress with the meeting. I see the hand of Honorable Letsia.
Yes, good afternoon, Shanas. Good afternoon to all honorable members on the platform. The name has not changed, it's still Tebogo Letsia. I rise to nominate Honorable Mananiso to chair in the absence of the chair. Thanks.
Okay, there's a nomination for Honorable Mananiso to chair the meeting until the chair joins us. Any other nominations?
Yes, thank you very much. I rise to nominate myself to chair the meeting.
Okay, I don't see or don't recognize any other further nominations in terms of the procedure. And if that be the case, then we're going to ask Honorable Mananiso to take over the chair for the interim period. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Shanas, and let me acknowledge the confidence by
Recording in
Honorable
progress.
Litsie. Colleagues, once more, we would want to apologize by starting this meeting 15 minutes late. It's because of we've got many engagement, and as Honorable Chikwamban has indicated, it's election work. Honorable Chikwamban, we want to as well appreciate yourself being confident to yourself in terms of being the chair of this particular session. Firstly, one would want to apologize to DSI department that we actually joined this meeting late. However, we want to acknowledge those who have joined the meeting on time, that it was not deliberate. We're meeting today, colleagues, to have a briefing on issues of DSI and SKA in terms of the progress on the issue of SKA and the status and way forward in terms of issues that we've been deliberating with them regarding the challenges that they've been experiencing in this particular project. But noting the agenda, all of you can note that, colleagues, we have referred one of the item of considering the minutes on Wednesday to today. I would want to note the hands of the members in terms of minutes that we would need to consider in this particular meeting, so that we move smoothly as we get to our briefing. Just to remind the members, our minutes that needs to be considered and be adopted here. One is the one of the 8th of December 2023, the 14th Feb 2024, 16 Feb 2024, 21 Feb 2024, and as well the Eastern Cape Oversight Report. So with that indication, members, one would want to note the hands that actually second and adopt this set of minutes, and as well the Eastern Cape Oversight Reports. And those hands should even indicate if there's any amendments or in all these particular minutes or the report, so that we can move to the next agenda. On my screen, the only person that I can see now is Honorable Litsie. I just want to check as well other hands if there's any. Okay, I can see there's it is only Honorable Litsie's hand. Over to you, Honorable Litsie.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Chair. We move to adopt all sets of minutes on the report. I think it's they are clear reflection of what would have happened. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Litsie. Before actually getting to the, is there any dissenting view with regards to the minutes? Any omissions, any additions? Okay, then as an acting chair, I think one would want to concur with Honorable Litsie, but with few indication, Shanas, on the minutes that has just been adopted by Honorable Litsie. On the only mistake that one has noted, it's on the 14th of February, sentence number 5. It's just the spelling error, but the minutes are a true reflection. So the secretary can just indicate on her notes that item of sentence number 5, there's an error of to the 2024, whereas it was supposed to be for the 2024. But the minutes are a true reflection of what transpired in the meeting. And then let's move to the Eastern Cape Oversight Report. In the Eastern Cape oversight report, it again the mistakes in terms of how those minutes have been written. On 3.1.1.2 on Holehlahla residence, first sentence, they just need to clean it up and remove "and." They would check on that particular first sentence. It's just errors in terms of typo. And then on the issue of NCV, it's an NCV. It doesn't have the V in brackets. They just need to check all their minutes and remove that V in bracket. And then on WSU, the second sentence on 3.2.2.4, they must check as well. There's a spelling of paging. They need to check in terms of what needs to be removed there. And then on the 3.3.1.4, second sentence, they must remove after the use and off after maintenance. They just need to check as well there in terms of what needs to be rectified. But as I indicated earlier on, I really concur with Honorable Litsie that minutes are a true reflection. I just want to check in the meeting if the chair has already joined us, so that she can take
Yes,
us.
chair is on.
Okay, Shana. So I hope
you can conclude this process, Honorable Mananiso. I'll take over when we start the briefing. Sure.
Yes. So that's it from my side with regards to the minutes, Anash. I hope your team have been noting the additions and omissions, and as well I want to second the minutes as a true reflection of all the all the sets of minutes, and as well of the oversight. As I hand over to you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Noted, Acting Chair. We recorded the your suggestions for the changes in the minutes. Thank you.
I'm assuming good afternoon, colleagues. I'm assuming the minutes have thus not been adopted. Am I correct, Shanaz?
No, you are out of order. They've been correct. They've been actually adopted.
Oh, who adopted and who seconded?
With amendment.
The person who adopted is Honorable Litsie, and then seconded by myself with amendments. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Honorable Mananiso, and good afternoon to colleagues on the platform. Sincerest apologies for that delay. I was caught in another meeting relating to parliamentary duties, and I profusely apologize that we had to start when we did. Today we will be receiving a briefing by the Department of Science and Innovation and the National Research Foundation on the work that's been done at the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. So we'll be getting a progress report on the Square Kilometre Array and its radio astronomy in general, as well as an update on issues raised by the committee regarding the fence for the MeerKAT National Park, supporting National Park, the support for the communities that are in and around that particular area. So in Carnarvon, and then as well as skills development initiatives in that area and the socio-economic impact that we want to see in that area. We'll also be receiving a briefing on the Astro-Tourism Strategy and status thereof. I know there's been a lot of work that's been done between the Department of Science and Innovation as well as the Department of Tourism. In fact, there's a task team and quite a lot was being done in that regard, and we'd like to know what progress has been made in that. And so, yeah, that's in essence, colleagues, the briefings we're receiving today. DG, I can see that your people told you that we missed you In fact, I missed you in particular. And I said, Aibo, askambonu tichi in this year. So I'm glad to hear that the DG is with us, Dr. Mjwaha, one of the best DGs that we have in the sector. And as you leave us, DG, we've been saying that we hope you've been grooming and you have a good succession plan, because the work of this department is really commendable, and the way in which this department functions is really commendable. And we wouldn't want to see any decline thereof. So I'd like to hand over to you, DG, to just brief us on what's been happening at the SKA. We've had conversations before. We've been to the SKA. We've seen some of the projects that you have in the communities, but we'd like to see what progress we've made. And we've seen, this Astro-Tourism path coming, moving all the way from Sutherland into Carnarvon. And so we'd like to know if there's any progress that's been made in that regard, anything tangible coming out of some of the discussions that we've had to contribute to the livelihood of the communities in the Northern Cape. So over to you, Dr. Mjwaha.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to the honorable members on the platform. Maybe before I delve into the presentation, Chair, I need to acknowledge the board members from the NRF. I may not have seen all of them, but I remember seeing Professor Moja. I think I also saw Professor Glenda Gray, and think I also saw a third board member now. It's Dr. Len Kwong. Yes. I don't know if there's anyone else that I have left out to see. Fulu? No? And then we are also, of course, joined by the CEO of the National Research Foundation, Dr. Fulu Nelwamondo, and also joined by, I think I saw his deputy, Professor Dr. Angus Peterson. Yes. Oh, yes. And of course, there is and Lahlane has also joined from the board as well. So my apologies. Dr. Ntomi Mchekwane, okay, is also under Dr. Linde. Okay. So those are the board members that have joined. As I said, the CEO is here, Dr. Nelwamondo, Deputy Angus Peterson. I don't know if there's anyone else who has joined. And then we are also joined by the MD, the Managing Director of the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory, Potso, with the team, Adrian and others. And then, of course, the DSI team with Mr. Imran Patel, who said he may leave, and then Dagalani, Lisbeth, and others. And I think I also saw Paki Munyobo, who is the representative of the Northern Cape government in our governance structures. Lisbeth from my office. I left Devet from the project office. I'm trying to make sure I acknowledge everyone. Yes, if I've left anyone. Oh, of course, Chair, if you don't mind, there's a gentleman called D. Swartz. That's Derek Swartz, who's a special advisor to the minister. Okay, on the chat, I'm told that we're also joined by the DDG from tourism as well on the Astro-Tourism Strategy. So that's the entire team from our side, Chair. We hope then to do two presentations, one after the other. The first one is on the update on the SKA, which I will do, hopefully in about 35-40 minutes at the most. And then the other 25 to 30 minutes to be done by, I think Tagalani will do that on the Astro-Tourism Strategy. I'm not so sure if he will include the visitor center in Carnarvon. Maybe we can just talk about that if that is not in the slide. And with your permission, in order to pace ourselves, we hope we can do this in maybe 1 hour, 5 or so. So it's 2:30 now, so we should be done by 3:30, 3:35, if you are fine with that in terms of your time frames. Is that in order, Chair? Okay, I assume it's in order.
It's
Should
okay,
be in order.
DG.
It should be in order, DJ.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'll do, we had with Shanaz said we think we can share the presentation, and I hope you can see it.
You can see it, DG.
All right. So what we would like to talk about, Honorable Chair and members of the Portfolio Committee, as we give you a progress update, is we've invested in this instrument over years. It's a scientific instrument, so we want to update you with the scientific returns that we have had. We hope to brief you on the capacity that we have developed to make sure that we don't end up with an instrument where the scientific South African and the rest of the African community do not participate. So we'll talk about human capital and skills development. We'll talk about the technological returns because, as you know, building a science instrument like this involves huge technology. So we want to give you a sense of how those technological returns have helped us in reviving some local manufacturing industry, innovation, commercialization, and prepare ourselves for the era of big data. You indicated, Chair, that socio-economic returns, community upliftment, educational improvements in the area, job creation and growth of SMMEs is one of the issues that you had picked up. So in the presentation, we'll do that. And then later on, we can give an update on where we are with the funds. And then the work that we do in the rest of the continent to make sure that as they supported the bid to host the telescope here, we have returns that go back, but also to build the capacity. And then, of course, the international partnership. But before, this is always my problem. When I move the slides, then they don't move. I'll try one more time. It looks like they always have maybe some time frame beyond which, if you don't move the slides, I'll try one more time. If we fail, we'll just ask Shanaz to. Shanaz, maybe I should ask you, if you don't mind, to share, because somehow my machine doesn't move the slides, if you don't mind.
Okay, TG, let me just see.
Okay.
Is that my screen now?
Yes, I can see it on my side. So if we go to the next slide, Shanaz, because that's the slide that we want to use as a basis for when we talk about scientific, economic, as well as technological returns. Where are we getting that from? So we conducted a study which was done by Urban Econ, Development Economists Company, to look at what have we done between 2011 and 2022. So this is the words that came out of the executive summary of that study. Expenditure has had a significant positive impact on the South African economy and is expected to continue once all construction is complete. These positive impacts have been critical in contributing to the developmental objectives of both the Northern Cape and South Africa. And then secondly, the project has had a largely positive and significant impact on the national socio-economic conditions and scientific activity. Substantial contribution has been made towards education, skills development, and employment opportunities. So this is the executive summary of the study that we have done. So I've already talked about the overview. So let's move to the next slide. Maybe just to give a little bit of a background on the context within which we are doing radio astronomy. We have optical astronomy with the South African Astronomy Observatory, which has a number of small telescope and investment. And we have a heritage of almost 203 years in the area of optical astronomy. The Southern African Large Telescope, which I assume the honorable members had an opportunity to visit in Sutherland. We have some investment there with 20 years since the start of construction in 2003. But today we want to talk about radio astronomy. This started 60 years ago when Hart Rao, RTBS Radio Astronomy Observatory, started work with a dish that was installed in Hart Rao to work with NASA. It's a smaller investment and limited impact over 60 years, but is a very good instrument, still working. And then, of course, when we embarked on the bid to host the Square Kilometre Array, we started off with the 7-dish array, 64-dish array, MeerKAT. And then, of course, to remind everyone that the SKA is an international project. We won the bid to host the mid-frequency part of the telescope, with the low frequency being hosted, as we all know, in Australia, and then the African very baseline interferometry network. So we have been on this for 21 years, and it was established SKA Project Office in 2003. There's a small activity on gamma rays, working with Namibia on the HESS telescope, which is looking at analyzing gamma rays. 20 years of participation. A number of South African universities have been involved in supporting Namibia in hosting this gamma ray telescope. So hopefully this gives you a full spectrum of the different wavelengths of astronomy in South Africa and Southern Africa. Next slide.
Some reason the next slide doesn't want to.
Yep, I don't know. Maybe it's too much information. It takes time to move. Okay, thanks, Shanas. Next. Yeah. So this is just an overarching slide that's showing why we embarked on a wavelength astronomy. We wanted to develop South Africa into a hub of astronomy, sciences, and facilities with a specific intention to have facilities and instrumentation, advance science advancement, human resource development, socio-economic and commercial benefit coming out of this. And therefore, we've been developing policy, strategy, funding, and then, of course, we have developed legislation to make sure that we are able to protect the pristine environment we have in order for this multi-wave astronomy to happen. Next slide. So maybe just to give a little bit of a background, and we'll try not to be too scientific here. In fact, could you go to the next slide and then we'll come back to this one, Shanas, because I think, yes. So this is a slide that tries to say, why are we getting involved in astronomy at all? And you'll see that at the bottom, the universe has approximately 13.7 billion years. It's been in existence for 13.17 billion years. And you'd see on the left-hand side that the first stars were seen about 400 million years after the Big Bang, as it is called. And since then, you will see that the universe has been expanding with all of what's happening in the universe, inside this flask, if you want to call it. And we have seen development of galaxies and planets in this period. We're seeing the dark energy accelerated expansion, as you can see towards the right. The universe seems to be expanding in the last couple of years at a rate more than what happened in the beginning. So the big question is, why is the universe expanding? And if you then go back to the previous slide, Shanaz, it's because a number of activities in these galaxies and the star formation and the evolution of the universe has these waves that contain information that happened 400 million years ago, or 13.5 billion years, and they've been traveling, have been in the universe for 13.5 billion years ago. Now, what radio astronomy does, as you can see at the bottom, these are different wavelengths. So radio waves are on the extreme right. But what you can see on this picture is that radio waves let us see objects that we can't see in the visible part of the spectrum, that one in the middle, like the gases and galaxies. So, but we do know that they exist and they contain very useful information. So what a radio telescope does is it then receives these radio waves, as you can see with the two yellow lines, and you have a dish that reflects those waves onto the centerpiece or off center, depending on how the dish is designed. And then at the smaller part of the dish, you have a receiver, right? And then at the receiver, this information is digitized, and then it goes down into a computing facility. So you're converting information contained by these radio waves that contain information of what happens in the universe. You digitize, and then once you've digitized, you try and analyze what is contained in this information. So that's just basically how a radio telescope is constructed. So with that background, if we move to the next slide, Shanaz. Yes, we've seen this one. What is therefore the SKA? It's a mega scientific instrument that endeavors to build the largest radio telescope ever built and will become the largest scientific infrastructure in Africa and the world. And it will be 5 times more sensitive than existing instrument. And it will have data rates that exceed the entire global internet traffic, and will require, of course, the fastest supercomputer ever built. We will come back to these issues later on in terms of sensitivity, expansion, how we're processing data, and then how we've built a component of this supercomputer. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of how this has been done, the view has always been that you will have a phased approach in how the SKA will be rolled out. Because it's dishes that can be built separately, you can always add additional dishes and connect them to the original set of dishes to keep expanding the number of dishes. So in South Africa, we started off with 7 dishes, which are still in the Karoo, which we call Karoo Array Telescope 7. This was an engineering test bed just to learn how to build dishes and how you can connect them, and then how you can start to make analysis. And then, as the members know, 64 dishes were launched on the 13th of July by the Deputy President, and we are now adding 13 dishes, which we call the MeerKAT expansion in partnership with Italy, China, as well as Germany, and we'll come to the details. So at the beginning, there was an understanding that the SKA will be built in 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2, where on the 70 odd dishes, 71, 67, plus 13, there will be 133 dishes that will be added to the MeerKAT and the expansion, which means there would be 200 dishes in South Africa, and they would be up to 150 kilometer baseline from the core of the telescope. And then there was a discussion at the time that there would be phase 2 beyond 2028. This discussion has been put on hold to say, let's finish the 210 dishes, if possible, by 2028, and then we'll reopen the discussion for phase 2. So at this point in time, we talk about SKA, we don't talk about phase 1 and phase 2. And that means after the expansion, the process of getting 133 dishes by the international community now will commence. Next slide. So we have a global headquarters in Manchester, and then we in South Africa and Carnarvon are hosting the mid-frequency array, these dishes that you have seen, which will now be expanded with our Italian, China, and German friends. And then in Geraldton in Australia, they have this low-frequency array. So when we talk about an observatory, this constitutes the observatory. Next slide. So these are partners and members of the observatory. You can see the international partners who are at different state of becoming members. And then, of course, we work with partners in the continent, Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Madagascar, Mauritius, I can't remember, Zambia, Namibia, can't remember which this country is. So these are the partners that we have in the continent. We all, even though as South Africa we host, we will share with you some of the work that we're doing, which has a Pan-African flavor. Thanks. Next slide. So this then goes into the detail of the 10 countries that are full members. And again, I will not go through this. Germany at this stage is in the accession stage. Go back. So Cabinet has approved the membership. It's now going to parliamentary process. Canada has announced intention to join as a full member, and they are starting the internal processes within government and parliament. And Sweden and France are awaiting government process to join. And then there are early discussions with Japan and South Korea to also join. Next slide. Now, as you know, we have the reserve in Carnarvon, and this is how the design of the mid-frequency would look like. So you have a core in the middle, and then you'll have the spiral arms that you see here, where each dot represents 25, I think 25 dishes. And then, of course, the idea is to expand these at the time to even Botswana and Namibia. And as I said, that was the idea of a phase 2, but this is on hold now. So we'll only go up to 150 kilometer baseline as part of this phase of Square Kilometre Array. Next slide. So as we have indicated, we are expanding the 64 dishes by 13 dishes to bring it to 77. And this project is fully funded to the value of 890 million rands. And the partners are Germany, 400 million, Radio Astronomy in South Africa, 400 million, and then Italy with 90 million. And this will give additional infrastructure benefits for South Africa and local work as we expand with these 13 dishes. But what is the scientific significance of this is that it enhances scientific capability of MeerKAT. It improves the baseline from 8 to 17. And most importantly for the scientific community, it increases sensitivity and resolution of images, which means that fainter signals can be picked up that you wouldn't be able to do with 64 dishes, and resolution of the image, which means you can see image not in a blurred state, but in a much clearer state. It reduces the schedule pressure for the SKA1 because it helps the understanding or prototyping of phase 1, and then it demonstrates concrete progress on SKA finding, stakeholders, and boost confidence in the project that the project continues to start in a sense, and then it's a way of mitigating risks and losing capability at Sarau, because we can keep the staff that built the MeerKAT, the 64-dish array. Next slide. This is just a picture of the first dish of the 13 dishes, which was a technical handover on the 21st of Feb. So this is really fresh news of the 13 dishes that are going to be deployed as part of the MeerKAT extension. Next slide. We also had this conference that took place in Stellenbosch last week. 250 participants and the beneficiaries of the bursary program and alumni. 259 papers have been published using MeerKAT data, with 40% in the last year alone. So we're seeing a phenomenal increase in the last couple of years on the scientific return. But the scientists are telling us that we are just at the beginning, huge amounts of scientific data available for deeper exploration for many years. So we'll continue to see this exponential expansion. And then we've been receiving awards. Royal Astronomy Society of London said this when awarding the MeerKAT Team Award in January 23, that after more than a decade of development and operations, the MeerKAT team have, in a short time, achieved spectacular advances in radio astronomy. So we are very, very happy about this. Next slide, Shanaz. So this is a picture of 4 individuals whom I suspect the members know very well, who then were handed over the certificate. Actually, they got the certificate for the work they didn't do, because this was an accolade by the Royal Society of London. But nevertheless, we are grateful to Sarau for giving these individuals the certificates as a token of their contribution to advancing MeerKAT in South Africa. Next slide. I just thought, before we get into the detail now of the numbers of the scientific returns and where to from here, just to give the committee how radio astronomy and astronomers have changed the world through the techniques that they have developed as part of the tools they needed to analyze the data and in the building of this. So the Wi-Fi, which we are all excited about, come from the techniques which were developed for analyzing and transferring radio signals from black holes, later found expression in modern-day Wi-Fi applications. So it's really a technology that comes from astronomers trying to understand how radio signals from black holes could be transferred. And then on medical imaging, it was the use of very long baseline interferometry, a technique called VLBI, to produce high-resolution images from multiple telescopes, found application in magnetic resonance imaging, which uses magnets and pulses to emit radio waves to enhance the imaging details for scanning in medical diagnosis. So we are benefiting from the MRI these days as a result of astronomers using this VLBI technique. An accurate timekeeping and reference frame for telescope geodesies using the position of the Earth relative to the fixed position of the stars in the sky has found application in the improving GPS navigation technology that we all use so that we don't get lost. So let's give you now the numbers that came from the study that I indicated earlier on, done by Eben Ekon. So the study covered design, construction, and operation of MeerKAT, and a study largely positive in favor of, MeerKAT and SKA, and demonstrate significant returns on the project. So just to give you the numbers, 8.2 billion rands have been invested in all of the activities of the MeerKAT. Of that, 19 billion increase in production of the work that has been done, 8.9 billion increase in GDP terms, and 23,000 full-time equivalent jobs have been created. And they measured 4.62 billion increase in household income as a result of this work, and over 92,000 people have benefited from the project. Next slide. So we're now going into the scientific returns. The outputs have grown from below average to twice above the global average, and the global ranking in astronomy increased from 33 to 21, one of the fastest growing science in South Africa, with several discoveries being made and more to be done. We have increased the size of the astronomy community 3 times over 15 years, from 60 PhDs, astronomers, to over 200, and pipeline is still increasing. And then we have awarded over 1,600 bursaries, 15% of those to our partner countries in the continent, and bursaries spent from undergrad to postgrad in specific fields to support astronomy. We have 6 astronomy research chairs that have been awarded at various universities to develop local scientific capability. In fact, at the conference, it was indicated that there is a large set of proposals that are submitted in the MeerKAT by the South African scientific community. So we're very proud of this, because in other parts of the world, you have an instrument in your own country, but the instrument is accessible to global scientists, and very little is available for the local scientific community. So this is something we appreciate. Next slide. We also run a national awareness campaign. Some of the recommendations that we need to run national awareness campaign. Current efforts will be reviewed to improve further in partnership with these partners. We need to foster collaboration and partnership. A stakeholder mix will be reviewed at all levels to improve. Enhance industry engagement. Ensure dissemination of knowledge as in above, and developed an improved system for record keeping. We will continue to review and implement this, including documenting the history of the project and what has been achieved over time. Next slide. We need to promote and invest in tourism. And as you will hear now, Astro-Tourism Strategy has been finalized in partnership with our colleagues, which we are grateful, from the Department of Tourism and the Northern Cape Economic Development Department. We are now awaiting both ministers' approval for tabling this to Cabinet now. We have to improve communication with local community. And as you know, we have a community stakeholder forum will be reviewed to improve this, and then investigate long-term employment opportunities for artisans. And then we're having engagements with a number of sitters in industry to make sure that we take this recommendation forward. Next one. At the anniversary conference, we learned about the first pilot phase with the phase data set in citizen science that was launched online in 2021 by Oxford University. It attracted over 1,000 volunteers across the globe who discovered 142 variable stars. Launched by the minister at the opening of the National Science Week at the University of Venda, and then there's been a release of second data set to the South African public to access and participate in science of the MeerKAT. And training started with a group of students and teachers in Carnarvon. And of course, online training sessions have started to accommodate the African community, because there's such large number of data sets, and we need to open up through the citizen science framework, making sure that the data doesn't sit in archives, but is being used fruitfully. So we're very excited about this. Next slide. So this is the scientific return. So we now move to the technological returns. We've been developing a set of instruments as part of building the telescope. As I said at the beginning, now you have a digital signal that must go into infrastructure. So we've got printed high-end printed circuit boards that we have developed over time, and these can assist in reviving the manufacturing PCB manufacturing industry. These are used on MeerKAT telescope and other telescopes worldwide, having been developed in South Africa. Digitizer innovation, I did indicate that once the signal gets into the receiver, it is digitized. So we have first designed to sample and convert the analog signal as it comes as a wave, as I indicated, to a digital directly at a receiver. And this performs without generating electromagnetic interference, because once you do that, this is a radio telescope, you'll be difficult to get these faint signals that you want to see in the presence of large background noise. Robust design to withstand extreme Karoo weather conditions, and we also are proud that 75% of components that were used in the manufacture of the MeerKAT were locally sourced. Next slide. Of course, once the signal has been digitized, it has to then go into a computer. So you've probably had an opportunity to see the Karoo Array processing facility. This was a homegrown technology of this supercomputer. At the time, it was the fastest supercomputer in Africa and deployed by SARAO at 30% of the commercial cost. So in other words, if we had asked somebody to build this computer, we would have paid 30% more. And then the cost saving is estimated at over 103 million per annum as a result of not approaching commercial computing companies. And it has the potential to be developed for other local needs, and we are exploring this. Next slide. So what we have done now, working with the NRF and SARAO, is to start generating this intellectual property portfolio. And you can see on the left-hand side a number of patents, registered trademarks, open source software packages, closed software packages, and disclosures that come out of this. And there are products that have been developed, open source computing technologies on the right-hand side that I talked about, estimated at 100 million plus saving because it was done in-house. Low-cost general computing platform, we've already shown this. IonHub, which is a low-cost, high-power efficiency, ruggedized, high-performance computing platform. Tape library, and then this passive radar solution for aircraft tracking, because we just like to make sure that the telescope in its operation, there's no interference. So quite a nice portfolio. And we have, as a DSI, working with the NRF and SARAO, look at if some of them need to be commercialized, can we provide some funding? So we have this year provided some initial funding for taking some of these technologies into market. Next slide. Also, SANZA has looked at this data cube, which facilitates development of Earth observation data products, and skills transfer to SANZA has been done. And then the members of the portfolio committee are familiar with how the skill set and system engineering capability from SARAO was used to develop over 20,000 ventilators that were manufactured locally and were able to assist during the COVID time, when the supply chain globally could not allow us to get the ventilators that we needed to save lives. Next slide. So on the socio-economic benefits in the community, we have a community knowledge center and upliftment programs in Carnarvon. We have developed small, medium enterprises, nurturing talent and youth, and of course providing alternative radio astronomy friendly communication infrastructure and devices, so that as we try and make the area radio quiet, it does not mean that people around the telescope cannot and should not have facilities to communicate. Next slide. So over 300 subsidized broadband services to farms, over 8,000 local job opportunities created. 400 of those are permanent jobs.
Honorable Boshoff, sorry, DG. Honorable Boshoff, just be wary of your device. Honorable Boshoff. Sorry about that, DG.
It's okay. And then we have an artisan training. We have 4.7 million in community development initiatives, 130,000 hectares of national park declared and to be managed by Sand Parks, And then, as I've indicated, in terms of the local jobs, we also have 1,200 local women directly employed by SARAO and contractors and supplier development programs, and 90% of Karoo staff from local community. Next slide, Shanas. Now, if we move into the Pan-African development, if you see the dot in each of the countries, these are the partners. So on the left is Ghana, it's Kenya on the east coast, Mauritius, a small dot on the ocean, and then Madagascar, and then we've got Mozambique. That's the flag I couldn't recognize earlier on, Zambia, Botswana, Namibia. So all of, and then the rest would have been in South Africa. So these are partner countries that supported us to host the bid, and therefore we have an obligation to work with them to assist in developing capacities there. Next slide. So we worked with our colleagues in Ghana. What you see on the left-hand side is a dish that was used for satellites, downloading satellite information in Ghana, but it was not used. You would recall, or you know, that satellite dishes are fixed because they're, especially for these geostationary satellites, so they have to be in one position to receive the signals from the satellite. So you can't move them into the sky. So we needed to take this old dish, move it up, and then put a steering mechanism so they can move the dish around in order to pick up radio signals. So this is an initiative that we are happy about. This dish has been then converted from a satellite receiving station into a radio astronomy dish. So these are just pictures showing the technicians that we work with in Ghana to convert the dish. Next slide. So 8 African countries have now astronomy programs and high-performance computing facilities. Only Mauritius at the time had astronomy program. We have Ghana Radio Astronomy Observatory has been established. And then we have this program called Development in Africa through Radio Astronomy DARA program, which is co-funded by us and the UK's Newton Fund. And it conducts workshops and training programs in data techniques across Africa, and over 300 students have been trained in data analytics. You'd remember that we said large amounts of data comes from the telescope, and therefore you have to analyze it. And then, of course, we've had a rollout of high-performance computing and training programs in all of the SKA partner countries. This has been done in partnership with our Center for High-Performance Computing, and skills applicable to areas outside of astronomy, such as health and climate change, out of this Big Data Africa program, have now been made available through the support that we have provided. Next slide. So international partnerships, we are very, very happy that we have a very vibrant partnership. We have foreign direct investment to the site, 1 billion. We have a MeerKAT telescope, which is a twin sister telescope to MeerKAT in Sutherland that tracks you if there's an event that the radio astronomy facility picks up, and then if there's further analysis that is needed. South Africa, Netherlands, and UK are partners. You've probably, when you went there, saw other guest instruments such as Hera, CBAS, and then, of course, recently we're working with the Max Planck Gesellschaft from Germany on S-band receivers, and we've already talked about the expansion with Germany and Italy. And then we are very happy that in 2024, we have now been awarded the right to host the International Astronomy Union General Assembly for the first time in over 100 years in Africa, where we will be bringing over 3,000 astronomers. I think it will be here in Cape Town. Next slide. I've already talked about the contracts that would come to South Africa in the next 10 years. So these are some of the numbers and what would be happening on contracts that would be awarded to us, SARAO. There would be new jobs that would be created, and then the bursaries and grant. We hope to continue to look at this and build the skills indicated earlier on, working with different SETA's sectoral education and training authorities. Next slide. So we did talk about the need for us to increase the science and astronomy community. We want to increase the scientific papers. We want to participate meaningfully into the program. We want now to ramp up the commercialization of pipeline technologies that I've shown and others, and then of exposure of South African high industry to international market opportunities, and then continued community development projects that we've supported, and then the Karoo supply development and training program to support SMMEs. Next one. This is just the slide that shows the breakdown of the contracts that have been awarded to South Africa and to whom, and the amount in euros. And then you can see that in total, 163 million euros is the amount, together with, of course, the current procurement and the future expected outcomes. And this translates to 107% cash return on the investment that we've made in South Africa in the construction of the SKA. Next slide. This is a different way of showing the income and expenditure, so I don't think we need to worry about this slide. And then the last slide is, what are the likely opportunities in getting into these signals that we convert from radio signal into digital signal, and the opportunities for big data and the infrastructure and the digital economy in South Africa. So I've already talked about, you get this signal that comes to the big panel, it's reflected onto the receiver, it is then received, digitized, and then it goes into the computer. So it's a different way of talking what I've talked about. But the point I want to make in the next couple of slides, next slide, that we already, you were quick before, an amount of 1 billion, next one, 1 billion has been secured from the BFI facility so that we can have the game fence for the MeerKAT National Park, as we have indicated. So that's the first feedback on the issue of the fence for the park. And then, of course, there are requirements that we need to have as part of the hosting. We have to have the engineering operation center, where the engineering would be done, the science processing center. Once you have the data, you need to process it, and then the operations on a day-to-day. So we have data, and it must be provided to the end users through what we call SKA regional centers, which we call SRC. So these are not student representative councils, but the SKA regional center. So I'll use that term in the next two slides as I wrap up. Next slide. So once the signal from the telescope has been digitized, the data storage and processing begins until it is distributed to the scientists for research purposes. The observatory that I talked about earlier on will coordinate a network of these SRCs that will provide the telescope data access, analysis, data archive, and user support. So these SRCs and network will then take the data into the scientists. And then in South Africa, our SRC would be implemented as part of a range of activities in building this data infrastructure in partnership with other key initiatives that we have supported to build the digital economy. These include the NIKI's program, as well as the FDCR capability, which we have at the CSR. So we're going to build very, very huge infrastructure, the capacities that will be needed for the digital economy and the opportunities that it prevents going forward. Thanks. Next slide. I think it's a schematic diagram that shows that from the telescope in Australia and our telescope, you will then have these SKA regional centers, the SRCs. The scientific community on the right-hand side will then access this as the data from the SRCs through the science platforms. So this is what we are now designing and building and engaging at international level, but also here in South Africa to say, how do we fund, how do we design, and how do we make sure that we fulfill our obligation to have these regional centers. Next slide. So although we have invested 9 billion to date through the MeerKAT, it has resulted in a scientific capabilities and output, which I've shared with you. We believe that the MeerKAT SKA will have a net positive foreign direct investment in the long term. And then we are also looking at commercializing IP that I showed earlier on to make sure that we bring additional economic and financial benefits onto what we have invested in. Next slide. I think it's probably this last slide. Of course, there are a number of challenges that we are working on, and we can look at them. The funding is not, I think, an issue which we want to share with you, but that you be aware. We have ongoing engagements with Treasury, and then we continue to work with other countries to join the SKA project so that our contribution is minimized as part of investment to build the 210 fishes. Next slide. Thanks very much. I'm sorry, Chair, I was hoping to be done by 10 past so that I can hand over to Tagalani to do the Astro-Tourism Strategy. And I'm not so sure if he's going to include the visitor center in Carnarvon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, TG.
Tagalani, are you ready, sir?
Oh, thank you, DG. Thank you, Chair, and honorable members, and all the colleagues. Thanks for this opportunity to share with you this new partnership and the development of the Astro-Tourism Strategy. So, not sure if I should share the presentation, or Shanaz is going to upload it from a site. Shanaz?
Try and share on your side, but if you have challenges, then we'll assist.
Okay. All right. Okay, let me see if I can quickly share that. Okay, Audrey, let me just check, Audrey, maybe, because it seems like, Audrey, are you there? Maybe Audrey,
yes, I'm here. I'm here,
yeah.
Chicken.
Yeah,
should
maybe
I try to share it?
You can just quickly share it from your side. So I think as Audrey is doing that, I just wanted to say, Chair, that we have our own tripartite alliance on this initiative that we're working together between the DSI, the Department of Tourism, as well as the Northern Cape government. So that is our tripartite alliance on this initiative. Yeah, so I think we can go to the next slide. So the purpose. Okay.
Device.
I didn't know what the date of birth.
Honorable, it's here, your device. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so as we stand, we've been developing this strategy over the last 2 years through a consultation process with the relevant key stakeholders that I will share later. as a joint initiative. And as we stand now, the strategy has actually been approved by both ministers. And we are now actually taking it to cabinet for approval. And then also in terms of the governance, we have a DG's steering committee, the DG's between the two departments, and actually the head of department in the Northern Cape, Department for Tourism. So this, we are guided by the DGs, where we present and get guidance in terms of this project. But also we have also established what we call the Astro-Tourism Governance Body, which consists of a representative from various departments and key stakeholders, which I think has only just had its first meeting, but this report through our DGs. So the strategy will also be, it was actually supposed to have been presented at the ESAID cluster yesterday, but we couldn't do that because I think we were just waiting for a final signature, which we have now done, but I'm sure we will present this in the next ESAID cluster meeting. And then some of the key projects around this strategy involve what we call the VETS Digital Dome, as well as the SKA Visitor Science Center, where we hope to go into a tender for construction, finally, for the SKA Science Visitor Center that will be in Carnarvon. So I think we can move to the next slide. Why do we need this astro-tourism strategy? This was as a result of defining some kind of a problem statement, because you have a very fast-growing tourism industry in South Africa, and then on the other hand, you've got a fast-growing astronomy community, and bringing the two together could then result in this, what we call the astro-tourism sector, which is basically a science tourism, basically. And it's informed by the fact that 50% of the world population can no longer see the dark skies and the stars due to increased light pollution and big cities. And in South Africa, we're fortunate that we still have some of the pristine sites in many of our rural areas. And of course, there is a high unemployment rate in South Africa, and how can we contribute to that with this astro-tourism sector? But also because local community, there's a general lack of awareness, about astro-tourism, and this strategy seeks to address that as well. But also, although some of the things were happening, they were happening in an uncoordinated manner. So the strategy will help us to bring coordination into the sector and derive synergies and alignment and so on. Yeah, so we can move to the next item. How is this strategy aligned to the current policy and strategies that we have both in astronomy and in tourism? So this is just a list of some of the key policies that have informed the development on this strategy, from the white paper in science and technology, and also the astronomy geographic advantage legislation that we have, and the multi-wavelength astronomy strategy, I think both of which the DG mentioned in the SKA presentation. But of course, on the other hand, there is a legislation that talks about indigenous communities, because we're also looking at what we call cultural astronomy or indigenous astronomy, and how we can protect that and also build on that. And of course, from the tourism sector, there is a number of strategies as well, which I have listed there. And I'm glad that my colleagues from Department of Tourism, DDG, Shamila Shetia is here, as well as Letitia, as well as the colleagues from the Northern Cape, who can also talk more about the relevant strategies that are, we try to align. Yes, DG?
Could you, through Chair Tagalani, maybe switch your video off because you keep breaking?
All right. Okay. Thank you, DG. All right. Is that better now? Can we go to the next slide? So what we also did as part of development of this strategy, we went through an international benchmarking process, to see how is astrotourism conducted in other parts of the world, and what can we learn from those countries. So as you can see, starting with the USA and countries like China, UK, on the other hand, those are countries with astronomy facilities and also astrotourism products. And then also we looked at what we call community-centered initiatives, which are more prevalent in countries like India, New Zealand, and Australia. And then also what are some of the major astrotourism routes that have been developed in other countries, such as the ones that we mentioned on the right. So that was looking at the international community, but we also looked at the African continent as well in the next slide, where you will see that closer to home, we looked at Botswana, Egypt, Kenya, Namibia, and Morocco, where astrotourism also is already happening. Next slide. Yeah, so and really what is astrotourism? Is really the use of the unpolluted night skies. But of course, you can also add radio silence as well, because it tends to be looked at from the optical astronomy perspective, and therefore using appropriate scientific knowledge for astronomical, cultural, activities. As I said, half of the visible nature is after sunset, but the night sky and all its beauty, rainbows and others, is absolutely free and unique. It is always available and never needs to be fixed. So basically, as a global community, we have got shared skies, and therefore taking advantage of that, we then grow astrotourism experiences through various offerings and products, whether starting with things like stargazing and so on. And then the next slide talks about the strategic focus the strategic advantages that we have in South Africa, is that if we have an inclusive astrotourism sector, it can help us to yield sustainable benefit sharing opportunities by maximizing on the marketing efforts, but also enhancing visitors' experience through our facilities and other establishments across the country. And the objectives really is around enhancing transformation as well, and inclusivity, but also building destination, competitiveness, so that we can attract more visitors, both locally and from abroad. But of course, the main thing also is about partnerships, so that we can build collaborative partnerships with various communities, private sector, and so on. So we can move to the next slide. So as I said earlier, we have a geographic advantage, particularly in the Northern Cape, but also as the Southern Hemisphere, where our night skies are still much pristine, you know, it's kind of like somehow the lack of development, you know, where you, in some areas where you have also less populations and less development, actually it's a benefit for us in the sense that we still have a lot of unpolluted areas in terms of the night skies. Yeah, so, and of course, South Africa has a rich history of unique star law in terms of various indigenous communities, and our ancestors have been looking at the stars for generations, and they have their own interpretations of you know, the stars and all of that. But of course, in Sutherland, and the honorable members, you know, when they visited Sutherland in 2022, January 2022, you know, had an opportunity to visit the SALT telescope and also observe the night skies, you know, and have that, you know, sort of real experience, because SALT telescope has given us kind of a pilot study where we've been piloting this astro-tourism. So we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so this just gives you a sense of what we call the key pillars of the strategy. The strategy is premised on three key pillars. The first one being indigenous, celestial narratives, and human capacity development. The second one being infrastructure development, because, you know, for astro-tourism to thrive, you know, you need to improve the roads. I'm sure the members will remember that we drove from Carnarvon to Sutherland, and some of the roads were not up to standard, and that limits astro-tourism. And that's why, you know, we are engaging with various stakeholders to make sure that infrastructure improvement where it is needed, because particularly in the Northern Cape, where we want to connect Carnarvon to Sutherland as a astro-tourism route. And then the other pillar is inclusive tourism growth and partnerships. So these are the key pillars of the strategy, which also then inform the implementation plan. And then this is a pillar one, just to give you a sense of what are the opportunities, the challenges, and the interventions that we are putting in place, as well as some of the projects that we are already putting in place to address this. And then we can move to the next pillar of infrastructure. As I indicated, that you know, some of the infrastructure challenges, you know, can be a challenge, but we have to find ways of, you know, partnering with various departments who are responsible for infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure, to bring it to their attention and so on. But also in, you know, where there are investments that are already happening. And then the last pillar in terms of, you know, inclusive partnerships, this is more about strengthening the astro-tourism competitiveness through deliberate collaboration efforts and destination, you know, development. So we can move to the next slide. So what we did was, as we were engaging with stakeholders, we had to develop a list of current projects that are aligned to this strategy, because this strategy is not coming in a vacuum. Astro-tourism is already happening, and therefore we asked actually the stakeholders to submit projects. And you can see that the total projects amount to about 271 million. And those that are funded currently is around 138 million. But we still have unfunded projects to the tune of 132 million. And that is also where we're going to focus on, in making sure that how can we unlock funding opportunities for the unfunded projects, either through some of the existing funding instruments that are there, but also this is something that we're going to be engaging with the National Treasury to see if some kind of an astro-tourism fund can also be established, maybe in the medium to long term. And this just gives you a sense of some of the funded projects, including the SKA Science Visitor Center, which is a joint project funded by our department and tourism, as well as the Northern Cape government, to the tune of 62 million. And as I said, at this stage, the detailed engineering plans are actually being finalized, and we hope that those can be approved in the next several weeks, so that we can go on tender this year, but also start the groundwork this year, soil turning, so that, within the next 2 to 3 years, we can have this SKA Science Visitor Center up and running. But in the meantime, we are having open days at the SKA site, I think 3 times a year. This is announced so that we give especially local communities to go and see what is happening at the SKA site, even though it is still a construction site. But also there are programs already that are where we are already training tourist guides in the area, both in Sutherland and Carnarvon. So those are some of the projects that are underway. And these are some of the milestones and timeframes. Because when we developed the strategy, we also developed an implementation plan at the same time. So we are already in the implementation mode in terms of rolling out, supporting some of the current projects, but also looking at unlocking opportunities for some of the unfunded projects. But at some point, we are going to have to look at new initiatives as well that we can develop, because this is a national strategy. Although we are piloting a lot of these things in the Northern Cape, we want to also develop activities and projects in other provinces as well, going forward. Yeah, so I think we can move to the next slide. Well, this is what we had to do as part of the cabinet submission. You need to have this assessment, which we have also conducted and developed such a report. We can move to the next slide. So these are some of the key stakeholders that we are working with and we've been consulting on an ongoing basis. And these are some of the events where we have presented the strategy and to create more awareness to both the tourism and astronomy sectors, across the country. And of course, when we get cabinet approval, we will also go on another national consultation phase where we will gazette the strategy for public inputs as well. So next page. Yeah, so as I say, we're looking at this, from a wider perspective in terms of the various science product and facilities, both in the Northern Cape and also across the country, because in some areas in some provinces we have planetariums, in some places we have got heritage sites, and so on. So therefore we have to look at all of those and create the links around all of those opportunities. The next slide. As I indicated, we do have a success story in the case of Sutherland, where Sutherland used to be primarily a sheep farming community, but now with salt and other telescopes there, Sutherland has become an astro-tourism town, actually more than half of the visitors who visit Sutherland these days are actually going to see our telescopes and to just experience the night skies. So this is how astronomy has transformed a small town into an astro-tourism destination. And actually, we want to build on this kind of a success story. But of course, we continue to work with the Sutherland community to see how we can enhance further experiences, even in Sutherland and other surrounding communities. So I think, again, this is just summarizes the case study that we did a comprehensive case study on Sutherland to show what the impact has been in terms of the economy, tourism, health, education, and other social factors. Next slide. And this is just a stakeholder matrix that constitute that governance body that we were talking about earlier. That we need to work with stakeholders all the way from local municipalities to industry and so on, so that we don't leave, and including sun parks and so on, so that we don't leave anyone behind in this development. And of course, we also at the same time developing a monitoring and evaluation framework so that we can monitor the performance of the strategy in terms of some of the objectives and the actions that, so we also bringing in some experts in this area as well, so that we can have a much more, concrete M&E framework, for our strategy. Next slide. Yeah, so I think in terms of the way forward, so we are going to be seeking cabinet approval in the next few weeks of the strategy so that we can gazette it for further public consultation so that we can create more awareness across the country. And then also today, at least we are happy that we can share the strategy with Parliament, but also we need to continue supporting and monitoring ongoing projects, but also to strengthen this governance body as well, but also continue to find innovative ways of funding this, even through private-public sector partnerships. And as the DG indicated, this year South Africa is hosting the General Assembly of the Global Astronomy Body in Cape Town in August. And we want to use that event to build astro-tourism around it, where we can have tours to various destinations by the astronomy community that will be descending on our shores, because we are expecting about 3,000 astronomers. So we are already creating, putting together astro tours, packages that can be attractive to the global astronomy community to visit different sites as well, and also to get engaged in outreach with the communities and schools, and also where we will also be having lots of volunteers also from the local communities to participate in this big event, the biggest astronomy event that happens every 3 years. Yeah, so I think that is the, in a summary, Chair, where we are in terms of this strategy that we are working on. Thank you. Back to you, DG. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Talan. Where is the process to go to cabinet with this document?
Okay, let me ask DDG from tourism, because she's championing the process of going to cabinet.
And then we are done, Chair. Thanks.
Is the DDG still coming in?
Pamela, are you on the call?
Oh, I see Laetitia. His
Laetitia,
hand is
right.
up. Yes.
All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Apologies, DDG was just struggling with the network. But if permitted, I can just respond to that. We have drafted all the cabinet documents, and it is en route, and it should be now at our Minister Patricia de Lille for her sign off, and then it will make its route to DSI. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much. We're done.
All right. Thank you very much, DG, and thank you very much, Takalani. Thank you very much to the colleagues. Really insightful presentations, as always, from the Department of Science and Innovation. I'd like to note members who would like to make any comments or ask questions, make recommendations. From my side, I want to just begin with the first presentation from yourself, DG. On slide 20, we must welcome that that global ranking in astronomy. Our global ranking in astronomy has increased from 33 to 21. This is greatly welcomed, and that the size of the astronomy community has tripled over the last 15 years, from 60 PhD astronomers to over 200, and of course more who are in the pipeline. And I think with also the investments that we're deliberately making and access to education in this particular space also contributes to that. But would we be able to have a breakdown of a demographic breakdown of the 200 that we currently have? I think it's no secret that the committee is committed to issues of transformation, inclusivity, and intersectionality. And so, yeah, this 200, how does it currently look like? Those in the pipeline, what are we looking at? Those may be stats that we can't necessarily produce now, but could do so in the next 7 working days. So if we could currently do that. So in essence, how does what does the face of astronomy in South Africa currently look like, in particular relating to the SKA and our contribution to the SKA as a country? Then on slide 30, one notes and welcomes that there's about 4.7 million that's invested towards community development initiatives, 169 million spent with local or on local suppliers and contractors, and 8.4 million on local catering, tourism, and accommodation. And I think when it comes to these investments, one can only make a comparison based on what the overall expenditure is or contribution is. So for example, if we're talking about us investing about 160 or spending about 169 million rand on local suppliers and contractors, how much are we spending on contractors and suppliers overall? Because only then can we make a comparison on whether or not the 169 million is significant, or whether or not we could be doing more. I think on local catering and accommodation, I don't know, I mean, it's local, so tourism also. So I think, and I guess, what yardstick are we using to measure ourselves on whether or not the 4.7 million we're spending on community development, or that we've spent on community development initiatives, is the best that we can do? So and that's on slide 30. And then on slide 33, we welcome that there's now 8 SKA African partner countries, and one would like to know where we as South Africa have significantly contributed in terms of partnering or supporting any of those 8 countries, African partner countries. And then in relation to astro-tourism, One is really excited to see the development that or the strides that are being made. I think the last time one got a briefing on where we are in terms of the joint efforts between the Department of Tourism and the Department of Science and Innovation, it was perhaps last year. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, last year, I think in preparation for the Heritage Day debate, and I think the information that one had received was that, the proposed approach was being tabled before the two ministers, and that was around September. So one is glad to hear that we're now in March, and there's been agreement from the two ministers, and that we are now presenting this plan to cabinet. I think those developments must be acknowledged, because having gone to Carnarvon, Sutherland, one really has a great appreciation of what could be astrotourism in South Africa. Of course, astrotourism linked to mental health support and rehabilitation purposes. There's a lot that we can really do with astrotourism. So one definitely is a huge advocate for the success thereof, let alone speaking about the impact it could make in terms of or in relation to livelihood and job opportunities, and so forth. So one, we must acknowledge that there's been great progress made in terms of finalizing the plan. But the question would be that on one of the slides, speaking to competitive advantage, Gauteng has quite a lot of activity there, and one would like to understand what activity is that. I think that's slide 10 on that particular presentation. Yeah, it's quite, I don't know if it looks dense because Gauteng is so small, so but there's quite a lot of activity there, and there's a lot of pollution there. So I'm quite interested to hear where the competitive advantage is coming from. And actually it would be interesting to generally know where the competitive advantage is coming from in all those red dots. If you have a spreadsheet of some sort that can tell us where all those red dots are exactly, that would really assist us.
Am I the only one who has lost the chair? She seems to be muted on my screen.
Same here.
I can't hear the chair, but I can hear you, DG.
And
I think she's
welcome,
muted.
I
think she's
yeah,
muted.
she accidentally muted herself. Shanas, can you give her a call? She's probably speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, colleagues. I'm realizing that my device muted itself, and then I was struggling to unmute. So I was still, I think, I'm not sure where you lost me.
On the activities demonstrated by the dots and Gauteng activities, that's where we lost you.
It's the same happening.
Could I just confirm, am I still on the meeting?
You are. I'm just trying to get hold of the chair. Okay. Okay. Can we ask Ms. Manandiso to just take over the meeting from here?
Okay, thank you, Shanaz, and thank you, colleagues, for your presentations. I've noted the hand of Comrade Bafuze, Yabo, and as well, sorry, Honorable Bafuze Yabo, and Honorable Boshoff. Over to you, Honorable Bafuze.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me start first by extending my greetings to the DG and his team. Let me also extend my greetings to yourself, Chair, and the members on the platform. And let me welcome the presentation. That was the presentations that were made to us today. Let me first start by saying that the DSI is such a breath of fresh air to deal with because of the amount of detail that they always provide in their presentations, which almost makes it very difficult or impossible to ask questions because they are so meticulous. And I suppose credit must be given where credit is due, because when people don't do well, we are the first ones to come down on them as a ton of bricks. And so well done, DG, to yourself and your team with the kind of presentations you make to this committee, and by extension to South Africans at large who tune into these meetings. In relation to the strategy that was presented here, the Astro-Tourism Strategy, there are a number of things that were mentioned that I want to ask a question on. One, with the promotion of Sutherland and Carnarvon as astro-tourist destinations, who is going to handle the commercial side of that promotion? Is it going to be the Department of Tourism? Is it going to be the DSI? Are you going to establish a type of public-private partnership with other providers to run the commercial side of things? Secondly, we know that tourism carries with it a lot of logistical requirements. Things like shuttles, tour buses, hotels, lodges. What is the plan of the two departments to engage in deliberate empowerment of locals in some of those critical spaces that I've mentioned? Is there a possibility that perhaps there can be an invitation of some of our own developmental finance institutions, DFIs, to to run pilots or programs that will assist to empower locals with such. And whether there is a plan to maybe, if not go the route I'm explaining, have a comprehensive plan to bring in both big and smaller players on a developmental field, so to speak, where the big ones mentor the small ones. And also, you know, that I want to know the amount of material. I know that you might not have itemized the materials that go into the construction of the SKA. But I would want to know how much of the steel requirements was sourced locally. And considering that these are big satellites, where were they assembled and how was that process finalized? And how much in that process was allocated to SMMEs, in particular women and youth-owned SMMEs? And what is the sustainability plan in relation to some of these SMMEs I've just mentioned now, with the additional budgets that the project is getting? Is there a sustainability plan? And also, considering that this is a multinational project, are the procurement rules used the PFMA, or do you have a different framework that you are using, legal framework that you are using for the procurement of this whole thing? And I would want to also ask, because the area is intended to have very minimal interference, what happens when the numbers start to pick up of tourists? How will that be managed, considering that people travel with their gadgets to wherever that they travel? Is there a plan to mitigate against such an influx? Because by the sound of things, it sounds like you are going to attract a lot of numbers as time goes by. Will that not interfere with the area in terms of various signals coming in because of gadgets that will be coming in from tourists? And what is the plan to attract tourists internally, not just international tourists, but also across the country? Is there a plan in place to do that as part of the Astro-Tourism Strategy? I didn't see some of it come through in the presentation, Chair. And lastly, let me say that we appreciate the work done by the DG. We are aware, DG, and we know that you are on your last few months or weeks, whichever comes first, with the department and ourselves. But I want to personally extend my appreciation to the work that the DSI has achieved under your leadership. This is probably not the last meeting we are meeting, but in case it happens that you go on a hiatus like you have been since the start of the year, you get to hear it from us that we appreciate the work that you have continuously endeavored to do effortlessly, or you make it look effortless. And we hope that whoever will take over the reins will continue on that legacy. It is public servants like yourselves who make us proud to call ourselves South African, and that we endeavor towards excellence in all that we do. Let me pause there, Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity given to speak on these presentations. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Honorable Chair, I'm handing over to you. Hence, I was saying thank you, Bafuze, because I'm the one who noted him. Then there's Honorable Boshoff.
Okay, thank you very much. Whip, I have been struggling with my network for a second there. I appreciate your intervention. Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I would follow the lead by not opening my video. I must just say that I arrived at the grandchildren a while ago and they feel they have some legitimate claim on my attention. So if there's maybe some disturbance, I apologize in advance. But I'm very thankful for the presentation, which I also studied before. And you know that my angle towards this is always the impact on the local community and especially the farming community. But I would just want to ask a few things. The SKA is a fact, and the land which has been acquired has been acquired. People are have adjusted actually to the new reality regarding that. Although there may still be a bit of a resentment about things that we have discussed from before. So I don't want to focus on what we have already discussed at previous or had discussed at previous interactions. But the first question that I have is to ask, do we know what the SKA needs now? Because it seems to me there had actually been a little bit of a surprise about the access roads to the spiral arms. When it was published in the Government Gazette, which width the roads would be, registered for, the servitude would be registered to reach all these different spiral arms. I made a statement myself saying we welcome that because it is far less than legislation actually provided for. And then farmers contacted me and said, while that may be, they didn't read the legislation, but it is wider than they were actually informed from before. So it seems to me that we are still in a position, and I asked this question to Dr. Rob Adam when he was still the person in charge. Why did it evolve in such a way that at first pictures were distributed with sheep grazing on the spiral on the dishes, and then in the end the land was all bought up? And then he said, well, it's because it's such a new technology, nobody really knew or had known what was required. And knowledge grows as they go on. So I want to know, do we know now? Or may there still be some surprises? Because I think much of the resentment stems from that, of thinking, okay, we can adapt to that, and then we have to adapt to more. I want to liken it or to compare it to a dam which is built somewhere. if you know this dam is going to flood this area, then you don't like it, but it's fine. You understand the common good. But then if it floods even more, and then even more, and then even more, then the resentment builds up. Okay, so that's in the broad. Do we know what it needs or what is required by this time? And I want to refer that specifically to the Northern Cape, as the province as such is part of that law, which I always forget, something like the radio astronomy privilege area or advantage area or whatever, which includes the whole of the Northern Cape and a little bit more. Do we know by now, is there any economic activity which might be prohibited, or which may not begin, that we know of, which we didn't know of, let's say 10 years ago? Because it makes a difference. We know the Northern Cape is basically the hub for renewable energy, both in terms of green hydrogen and concentrated solar and photovoltaic. And in that sense, being the place where the energy is, it can develop into something like the Mpumalanga of the future, where industries originated around the coal fields because of the abundant energy. So to what extent will that not be able to happen because of the requirement for radio silence? It may sound as if I'm just negative about it. I think when one knows what to plan for, then you can plan better and say, okay, we can use the energy, but we cannot use it for this and that, but we can use it for that and the other. And that may be even more advantageous than what one could have expected. Okay, I'll go a little bit faster now. I want to know about the feedlot which we visited. Is it still functioning? The feedlot at Williston. There was references in one of the or a reference in one of the reports about Wi-Fi hotspots created, and I remember that we heard during our visit that the data highway that was built actually on, I think, from Cape Town to Beaufort West, and then across the mountain towards Carnarvon, and then to Clairefontein and Rosberg, where the different data centers are, that it would be possible for people along that way to tap into that. Can it already happen? Will it still happen? My information is that it hasn't happened, but that doesn't mean it won't. So I just want to know about that. Then, in reference to the MeerKAT National Park, I would like to know, can the department or anybody commit to a time frame? Because the time frame had been within a year from now for the past about 4 years. And then every time there's another step that one didn't think of. Now it has been costed, okay, but now it has been budgeted for. Okay, now it has been provided for. Okay, is it going to happen within the next year? Because that's the most recent indication. And I want to know if the department is sure that the funding is sufficient, that which is mentioned, because the sheep farmers in the area tell me that for that money, you can at best erect the posts. You can never get the wire, what do you call it? Spanned. I don't know what's the English word. Kan jy die draadspan vir daai geld? Can you really tighten the wires for that money? So I just want to know if the department is confident about that. Okay. Then legislation regarding the protection of the Northern Cape. I mentioned that. Infrastructure. I see the money set aside for the visitor center. The last time I drove through Carnarvon was, I think, in about December last year, and then the place, the terrain or the visitor center, it wasn't a construction site yet, it was just nothing. I think there was some building there somewhere before we had been there, and that was flattened, and now it still just looks like it used to look when we were there. So if we call it a construction site, what has happened there to be able to call it a construction site? I see the time frame is 2022, I think, to 2026. So we are 2024 now, and nothing visible is there, which of course doesn't mean there's nothing. I just want to know. About the roads, which are in a terrible condition after the good rains, the road that we took, which took about 2 hours from Williston to Sutherland, will take considerably longer these days because of the condition of the roads. And I think one of the problems is that the Northern Cape isn't quite integrated with itself. Parts of the Northern Cape is integrated to Kimberley, parts of it is actually more integrated towards Beaufort West and Laingsburg and even Cape Town. But especially in that area, it is as if the Northern Cape isn't integrated into itself, and this whole idea of the Sutherland Carnarvon astronomy area is a wonderful idea, because it seems to me that it will exactly fill that it will solve that problem, because if it's a few hundred kilometers of road still to be made. I may mention in passing that the road between Williston and Fraserburg is nearly completed, which will only leave us with the road between Fraserburg and Sutherland, I think some 120 kilometers to be done then. But then it will also take its share of the manganese lorries, and it may be end with full of potholes. Okay, that is okay. And then in the report which Dr. Arends presented, I think it, or is it? Yeah, yes, I think it's Dr. Arends. She mentioned that the presentation from the farmers of their impact, the impact of SKA on them, especially the guys bordering on the MeerKAT National Park, that the presentation hasn't realized. I know that the farmers are actually very eager to present, and maybe we could just discuss, maybe Shanaz and I, maybe we could even still fit it in before the election. Otherwise, I hope to be back after the election and to be able to facilitate that. But in the meantime, the staff will remain the same, even if the members are not. So I would just want to leave it with that, to say the farmers are really eager to present, and if we could just schedule it. Thank you very much, Chair. I was short, but not quite as short as either Honourable Letsie or Honourable Yabu normally are. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that the matter that we're bringing on the program before Parliament rises is the seventh administration. Yeah, the right stuff will remain, but we might not. And I don't know if the work.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Chair, your network is still very bad,
yes,
so we can't get what you're saying. I think your network is still a issue, so you keep on breaking up when you talk.
Oh no, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, so I was saying that the matter that Honorable Boshoff was raising will have to be raised in the 7th administration. DG, those are then the comments and questions from members. Honorable Mananiso, I'm not sure if you had wanted to raise anything.
You covered me, Chair. It was on localization and partnerships. So on your remarks, you actually covered what I wanted to get clarity on and other issues.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted, I think I hadn't concluded when I got disconnected, but I raised the matter regarding
the different locations, and then I had asked about Gauteng and what exactly the competitive advantage is there. And I guess we need to appreciate astrotourism in its diverse forms. I mean, I know in Mpumalanga there's a place where people go and observe the start of the new year, which is I think in September. We have what's going on in Sutherland. We have, I guess, domes and so forth, like the Wits dome at the planetarium there. I think that's what the dome is. So I guess we need to appreciate astrotourism in its varying forms. And, some of what is really basic astrotourism is kids going to planetariums. That used to be such a thing when some of us were growing up, which is not so long ago. And I really think with COVID and other factors, that sort of basic tourism is not even astrotourism is not even taking place anymore. But maybe and hopefully through this plan we'll see more of it. But I also wanted to ask, what's you've had a number of stakeholder engagements in relation to the plan around astrotourism. And given the fact that if my memory serves me right, we struggled slightly when it came to, I guess we could say, cooperative governance, to address issues like roads, right? And I'm giving an example of Sutherland. Yeah, I mean, colleagues shared with us how certain pieces that we put as part of the telescopes cost a whole lot of money, and just from that sense there should be, and then therefore they need to be transported on good roads and handled in a particular way. And just from that you would think that a municipality, a provincial government, Department of Roads and Transport, there'd be an appreciation of the fact that we need to fix the roads leading to these particular locations. And I don't get a sense that there's been that particular urgency, and colleagues can confirm this. But so one would want to know if there's been a holistic appreciation and a cooperative appreciation of what we actually want to achieve, and the fact that it's going to need buy-in from quite a lot of departments and stakeholders, right? So what are we sensing from the stakeholder engagements that we're having, particularly with other government departments, not only the Department of Tourism, but other, like quintessential departments that speak to us wanting to build the tourism economy through astronomy. I don't know what sort of document, maybe it's in the finer details of the actual plan, would sort of indicate what competency becomes whose. For example, some of the interventions speak to training some of the interventions speak to the training of tour guides. I'm trying to imagine training a tour guide who's telling people about stars. That person, I'm assuming, would have to be trained by someone who studied astronomy. So would that be the competence of the DSI? Issues relating to businesses and businesses getting funding that they need and being supported to, for example, render accommodation services, that type of thing. That falls within would that fall within the competency of another department? Or would this National Astro-Tourism Governing Body become the linkage of all these different departments? Like, how does it come together? Because different responsibilities would be placed across various government departments, and where would we then find synergy? And who would we then hold to account on the successes or failures? And who would be tasked in monitoring the progress being made in the implementation of this plan? Would it be this National Astro-Tourism Governing Body? yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to get to. And maybe just if colleagues could give us a general feel on, do we feel, DG, that we're moving, that there's buy-in on this plan, and that there's will, there's political will, and from the communities, is there any pushback, or is everyone excited that, you know, there seems to be a plan on board? Yeah, I think those are about the questions from my side. And just to say thank you to all the members for their comments and questions. Over to you, DG, and to Takalani and the entire team.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to the honorable members. We have about 35 minutes, so let's see how economical we can be with the questions. I want to make a suggestion through you, Chair, because if I just try and look at all the questions that you've asked on the astrotourism, I think they are in 2 parts or 3 parts. The one are issues which I'm not sure we can give you answers to because they are not part of a strategy, but it's the implementation details. But if the Department of Tourism, both national as well as the Northern Cape, have got the details on things such as roads, let's call it the enablers of tourism, and then the detailed tourism aspect of the strategy, the questions that were asked by Honorable Yabo around small and big developmental component of the details of the strategy and its implementation in terms of empowerment angle, logistical issues. Maybe they do have from the tourism side of the astrotourism. So maybe they can give those details. So I am just giving that as a sense of, as they respond, that maybe we may not have all the questions, with an understanding then as answers, with an understanding that once the strategy has been approved by Cabinet, we can then come to the portfolio committee with a detailed implementation plan, including all the issues we've raised. So just a comment. The second set of issues on the strategy relates to, maybe Takalani can comment about the Gauteng competitive advantage and what it entails. Maybe that's something he could talk about. The governance issues, I don't know if he would be able to talk about that in relation to who gets held accountable for the strategy, if it sits in the tripartite. If the national government is responsible for the broad policy and alignment with the overall tourism, and the Northern Cape is responsible for, have we clarified the roles? Basically, I'm calling it role clarification, I think is what you're asking, Chair. And then the political will / community acceptance, I suspect the Northern Cape at that level could comment, as well as the local government. We could comment from the side of the national and the 2 ministers' endorsement of this. We could comment from that. I don't know, Takalani, if you could also comment on the visitor center and the state of construction. I would preface that with the issue that it has taken a little longer for the strategy to be finalized because of the consultation that has to happen across all spheres. And therefore, Honorable Boshoff, we could then indicate to you whether the visitor center in Carnarvon, is it still on track based on the original estimates, or it's been pushed out? So we can give you that answer based on that. The roads integration, that's why I say that's the Northern Cape / National Department perhaps to talk about it. So that's on the strategy. And then on the SKA, I don't know, here we are joined by the NRF, whether the NRF Sarao can do the great breakdown of what you said on slide 20, the demographic the breakdown and intersectionality of the size of the astronomy and its growth. I don't know if they are able to do that, as well as the breakdown in terms of the support that we have at local level in terms of the SMMEs. I think that was probably asked by Honorable Yabo. And then maybe again, I don't know if they will be able to answer the question to say this amount that we have provided to the SMMEs and the local supply and the number that we have presented in slide 30. What's the yardstick? Is this what we have provided in line with the national norm? Is it below or above? So maybe if not able to do that, we take that and then we can submit with yourself the written explanation. We can answer the issue of what has been provided in the 8 partner countries. I would humbly say to Honorable Yabo, we talked about the data program, development in astronomy through Africa through radio astronomy. We can then give the details of how many people have been trained on data analytics. We are trying to track where they are if they are not. We've rolled out all the Center for Performance Computing, so all partner countries have got that. And then we also have some activities that are there through the bursary program. We can break down the number per each country that we are supporting. So we can then provide that detail in terms of the question that was asked in terms of the breakdown of the program. Just looking at my notes. And then to Honorable Yabo again, I'm not so sure if NRF can give the details of the steel breakdown on the usage, but I think we can indicate again to the committee and through you, Honorable Chair, that 75% of the local material was sourced locally. If you are asking us to break that down, I'm sure the NRF Sarah would be able to do that. And then on the procurement rules, Honorable Yao, we use the procurement rules of the entity that has been put to govern the SKA, which is an SKA intergovernmental organization. And the procurement rules are broadly then of an international nature, such as when you procure from one country to the other, the international governance rules agreed in international treaty organizations are used. And should the committee wish to get us to give the details of that, we could do so. But one of the principles as part of that have been agreed, which is not necessarily the procurement rule, but an internal arrangement that countries will try and get procurement back into their own countries, or work packages rather, that are in line with the investment that they've been made. So you try, if you invest 10% of the project, you try and get work packages in your country, let's say equivalent to that 10%. So those are principles and part of the policies that have been developed as part of the procurement strategy. So again, we could respond to that. And maybe the NRF, Sarao, you're bringing large tourists, and how do you manage the RFI? It's part of that. So I hope I've been able to distribute these accordingly. And then the NRF could also respond, Sarao, do we have an exact requirements for the land parcels that are needed, or is this going to change? Feedlot and the national park specific questions. So that, I think, would cover everything. So maybe let me start then with yourself, Takalani, if there's anything on the broad astrotourism that you've picked up, and then ask, followed by Shamila at national level in terms of the tourism-related issues, and if there's anything from the Northern Cape, Tisha, that you want to add, and maybe yourself, Pagi, in terms of the economic benefits that are seen. And then we'll then move to the NRF on details and whether they are available on some of the issues that were requested by the portfolio committee. If not, when can we make that available? So hopefully in the next 25 minutes, would be able to do that. So let's start with yourself, DDG National Tourism, followed by Letitia, followed by Paki, and then move to the NRF. But we can start with you, Tagalani, if there's overall issues you want to raise as we get into the tourism leg across all spheres, and then move to the NRF on specific issues and the breakdown issues that were asked by Honorable Boshoff, as well as the breakdown of some of the issues asked by Honorable Yabo and Honorable Chair himself. So let's start with you, Tagalani.
Okay, thanks, Chair and the DG. Just a quick one on my side, and then my other colleagues will respond. Yeah, I think maybe I can just indicate that this astro-tourism is basically a very niche market. So we're not necessarily expecting very high volumes, but even in that case, we're looking at a distributed model. That's why it's a national strategy where we need to build other offerings in other provinces so that we don't flood the Northern Cape with high numbers of people that can have a negative impact on the telescopes. So I think that is taken into consideration. That is why, coming to your question, you will see that on the dots that you were talking about on the map, you see places like Gauteng also having quite a number of dots, is because those are what we call the list of attractions. So let's say, for instance, in Gauteng, you've got quite a number of planetariums, you've got a lot of science centers, you've got other tourist destination areas. So the idea also is about making sure that all those facilities can also talk about astro-tourism, so that when people visit planetariums or science centers or some of the heritage sites, they can also get more awareness about tourism. So, but it's not an exhaustive list. It's a list that we are still developing, but we can share the list with you so that you can see where those dots actually come from. So I think that's all I can answer. Maybe then hand over to DDG and Paki to talk about some of the questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Letitia Jacobs. Our DDG is really just struggling to log in, so I'll just respond to the tourism-related questions. I'm from the Department of Tourism. So just to add on to Takalani's response in regards to the Gauteng tourism products, it's really, like TK said, about attractions, planetarium, museums that really just provide a narrative on astronomy as a whole, but also some guest houses, tour operators that do provide perhaps an astronomy experience, such as having a telescope at their guest house, just an activity added on to their existing product offerings. In regards to the second question, in regards to promoting Sutherland and Carnarvon, so you will see that within our strategy, there is a astro-tourism governance body, which does not only entails the Department of Tourism and Science and Innovation, but also local and district municipalities, our destination marketing organization, which is the South African Tourism and National Convention Bureau, to really establish marketing and promotional opportunities and access to markets through their platforms. In regards to inclusivity, as you've mentioned, astronomy is a really daunting subject, and how do you bring it down to a narrative that even somebody from the street will just understand what astronomy means and how to appreciate. So we have one of our pilot studies was an Astro Guides training, where 6 youth from Carnarvon were trained with no astronomy background whatsoever, but there was a curriculum developed so that they can have the basic understanding of astronomy, and then further on then be proper registered tourist guides in the Carnarvon area. So that is one of the opportunities or that we've identified to have a more inclusive development of the youth of the rural communities. And as the governance body, as we've shared the strategy, we have also engaged various other departments. As you've indicated, roads and access to facilities is extremely important. And we have had several engagements with various departments to ensure that buy-in, and there was a lot of support. Again, a lot of work as part of the implementation plan is to concretize that particular agreement and the way going forward. I think also in regards to the sensitivity of the science and influx of the number of tourism, I think one of the action plans, if that is the science center, so that we still respect the distance and the science that needs to be produced by the instruments, but also have an opportunity or a product in Carnarvon through the science center where visitors can understand and learn from the science itself. Thank you, DG and colleagues. That would be all from my side at this moment.
Thanks very much, Letitia. I'm not so sure, Pagi, if there's anything you want to add in terms of the Northern Cape's sort of tourism broad strategy and how it strengthens some of the issues that have been raised in the questions that I hope all of us.
Thank you, DJ. And good afternoon to members of the Portfolio Committee and to the colleagues. I'll try to respond to a few of the questions that have been asked. One, as regards the Carnarvon Science Visitor Center, yes, to Honourable Member Boshoff, I think it is ongoing. At this point, we are at the design review. We are almost at the final designs of the Science Visitor Center, and that we are looking at the financials thereof. And we are currently busy preparing a report to the steering committee, which is headed by the DG. And in fact, what we've done is that the decision was that we should actually, on the construction thereof, it will be constructed in 2 phases, which is phase 1, which will give us the initial workable, functional science visitor center, and then it will be, and other aspects will then be added later. Mention was also made of the fence around the MeerKAT National Park. What has happened is that the process has gone out on tender, and what the latest that we got was that the amount that was, the bids that were submitted were way above what was budgeted for, and as a result, I think a budget review process has been gone into, and then the tender will be re-advertised. On the other one, on the question was also asked around the tour guides that have been prepared around the Science Visitor Center, around Astro-Tourism. In fact, those are prepared to cater for also the needs of the science around astronomy. For example, they've been trained on the use of telescopes, and that's what they'll be able to do for all visitors that come to the area. In fact, on the SKA governance, I think the question was asked around what is happening, other departments regarding the issue of the quality of the roads in the area. What I can say at this stage is that in the program, ever since that we went into this process of the SKA governance, in the province itself, we've got a Northern Cape, what we call the Northern Cape Working Group, which is cross-functional and has got representatives from all departments. In fact, it has got all 3 tiers of government represented there. We've got the Department of Science and Technology, we've got the Department of Tourism, we've got Northern Cape departments, and the surrounding municipalities. So both national, provincial, and local are represented there. And in terms of the benefits to the local SMMEs, that have been throughout the existence of this project, that there's been considered effort to try and assist the local SMMEs to actually benefit from this department both. And to that end, what the SARAO has actually committed itself to do was what they call the 30% local participation goals. That is in their local participation goals, they speak of to include about 30% of all the projects that they have. 30% must go to what they call the affirmable business enterprises. So that has been the effort. And the challenge has been, sometimes when there are procurement opportunities within the province, and in particular the area where the SK project is being established, and to source what is needed locally. So because of that shortage of or the inability of the area to can actually provide that which is needed, then the project is forced to go and buy from outside of the province. That's the challenge that we've been faced with for all of these years. And I think in that way, that could be what I was trying to provide as responses to some of the questions. Thank you, DJ.
Thanks, Pagi. Who from the NRF, is it you, Ponzo, who will lead the breakdown of the science community demographics? If we're spending on SMMEs, are we spending in line, above or below the average of an activity like this? If you still want to add anything on the partner countries, please do so. How do you manage RFI vis-a-vis tourists? And then the amount of material, and then sustainability plans for the SMMEs that we supported, and then some specific questions that Honorable Boshoff asked.
Thank you, DG, and thank you, honorable members. I can indicate that in terms of the local spend, for the dish construction, 70% of the expenditure was spent in South Africa, so there's 670 million rand of that. In the local community, the economic model indicates 15% was spent, and this is on the direct spend, subcontracting local contractors, as well as jobs and other expenditure that was used in the Northern Cape. Regarding sustainability, we have actually partnered with the Northern Cape SMME Trust. They provide ongoing support to the SMMEs and then ensure that they remain compliant and therefore are able to respond to any opportunities that arise, including, for instance, now they are being, there's a process to get them to subcontract to the SKO, the international organization. As a matter of interest, I know the DG indicated that, the SKO follows obviously their own procurement rules. However, based on the work that we've done previously with MeerKAT, the SKO actually adopted our approach in terms of using local SMMEs and employing local labor. And therefore, they are also intending to spend about 10 to 15% of the contracts that have been awarded locally with the local SMMEs as well. And then regarding the breakdown of the demographics, what I'm going to propose is that we'll send a detailed written response on this, but I can already indicate that up to 2022, March 2022, the awards of the representation is that for postdoctoral, this was 32% of the total. For postgraduate, 74% were South Africans, and for undergraduate, 96% were South Africans. Regarding blacks, the percentage is for postdoctoral 27%, for postgraduate 51%, for undergraduate 85%. And then regarding women, the total funded by Sarao was 22% for postdoctoral, 35% for postgraduate, and 29% for undergraduate. But we will provide a detailed breakdown because we did actually do an analysis. Regarding managing tourists and the maintaining radio quiet zone, we already actually do have what we call open days. We have 3 of these a year, where we allow members of the public to book to come visit the site. These visits are always oversubscribed. And what we've realized is that people are really cooperative in terms of ensuring that they do not bring, harmful devices on site. So for them being in town, that is fine. It's not an issue. However, we still enforce strict requirements for people who are visiting the site itself, that they cannot bring any devices that emit radio waves. And we have lockers at our access gate where they can lock their valuables, but we actually encourage them to rather leave them in town. So managing that is that we have them arrive in town, leave their cars there, and then they get transported to site. And in that way, we also avoid them bringing petrol cars to the site, which are an issue. With regards to SKO and their needs, at the moment we've acquired all the land and almost all of the servitudes required for SKO. For that reason, we do not think that things will change significantly. We still have just one servitude that's outstanding. And we are still trying to resolve that. So I don't anticipate that there will be more changes that are unexpected. Regarding restrictions on economic activity, at the moment, there's coordination where these projects, as they are being planned, they do submit applications for permits to continue, and then we do an evaluation of the potential impact it might have on the site, and on the basis of that, then be able to engage directly. I can mention that the SKO itself is also looking at potentially using renewables as well, and different options are being evaluated to establish which one is the most appropriate. Regarding the feedlot, so the feedlot essentially belong to the co-op, and they have run into some financial issues, and were at some point considering even selling the feedlot. However, they haven't done so, and I understand that those issues have not been completely resolved yet. And then there was an issue regarding the
Wi-Fi data access from the infrastructure for the SKA data. We've lost Panzer. Adrian, are you able to respond to the on Wi-Fi spots and fiber, and could that be utilized by the community for data?
So thanks, DG. So in respect to Wi-Fi hotspots, as the NRF, we have been deploying Wi-Fi hotspots, low power hotspots in the towns and the communities to provide access. Those are located, I believe the first deployment was located in the various libraries. So those have been in operation for a number of months and have been really well utilized by the community. In respect of the fiber infrastructure, to be deployed by the SKAO, the nature of the data transmission is that it's it's proprietary, so it's specialized communication protocols being utilized by the SKA specifically. So at this point in time, it won't necessarily be accessible by the public or the community. But obviously, in terms of future planning and future upgrades of the infrastructure to be deployed by the SKO, this should always be will be included as a consideration. But I can't speak on behalf of the SKO at this point in time.
And then anything on the funding for the fence? Yes or no?
In terms of the adequacy of the funding, so certainly, DG, the amount with the initial budgeting exercise for the fence and compared to the responses to our tenders, certainly it was in excess of what had been budgeted for. But we believe that the responses have effectively overpriced the work required. And so what we have done is we've gone into a more detailed design process and appointed an engineering company to undertake the detailed designs in an effort to reduce the actual price of the game fence. So we're undertaking some cost mitigation actions at this point in time.
Okay, no, thanks very much. So, Chair, the summary of what I think we've said, and perhaps some suggestions going forward, is that on the breakdown, the NRF will provide the detail on what is on slide 30. With hope we've answered the 8 partner country support that we've provided, including what was on slide 33. I'm not so sure whether we've answered the question of, if we look at the SMME support that we provide in the area, is it above average for, if you like, similar type functions that are provided for SMMEs? Maybe if you compare with other provinces or as part of the national SMME strategy that we have. So we may just perhaps come back to you on that one. The Gauteng answered. The cooperative governance, I don't think we've answered that. So maybe we should come back to you, or either in writing. I'm saying governance vis-a-vis role clarification, vis-a-vis accountability as part of the Astro-Tourism. So I suggest we come back to you on that. I also think that maybe we have not been explicit in Honorable Liabo's question on, in Sutherland and in Carnarvon, what is the model for the delivery of the commercial aspect of the strategy? Maybe we've not been succinct. We've given some responses, but I don't think it's as clear as daylight. We can probably either write that up, or we could consider some of these things as part of the implementation strategy. The logistical issues, empowerment, design of this Astro-Tourism strategy, maybe again as part of the implementation plan, can give that detail as to say you will have established tour operators. This is how you bring in, the developmental aspect, and this is the target that you said. I see that as part of the implementation plan as requested. The amount of material, sustainability of SMMEs, Honorable Liabo, covered. Procurement rules covered. Tourist versus vis-a-vis RFI covered. Honorable Boshoff on the needs, I think it's covered. Feedlot Wi-Fi covered. National Park timeframe funding covered. The visitor center update where we are. Issues of impact on farmers. Chair suggested that comes under the next administration. So we will then do these 4 ones and then either figure out whether we are able to give the detail, especially the tourism related, or whether we think those would be better covered in the implementation plan, but would indicate that. And that, of course, once this broad strategy has been agreed by the ministers and goes to cabinet, who can then come back with an implementation strategy, including the details that have been asked here, and then the issue of the detailed breakdown of the demographics. So that's my summary based on the responses that we have provided, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you very much to all colleagues for your responses. We look forward to the responses that will come from the various programs that are due to come to us in writing. We will await those in the next 7 working days. What we are deferring to the next, or as our recommendations for the 7th administration to take over, we will articulate clearly in our legacy report. But having said that, thank you very much, DG. Thank you very much to all the colleagues for really always bringing to us insightful presentations and briefings that give us an opportunity to pave the way forward. You know, sometimes the feeling that one gets when interacting with DSI is that we're not troubleshooting. You know, we're not fixing problems. We're creating opportunities. And that's for me always, well, we're fixing problems because of course we have challenges in society where we must bring about solutions, but we're not necessarily fixing problems within the system, right? We're using the system to provide solutions to challenges that we are faced with as society. And so that's for me always very refreshing. DSI gives us an opportunity to dream, to think, to innovate. It really brings out the best out of Dintswalo. So thank you very much, DG, to you and your team. And we will put it in our legacy report that the next administration needs to, you know, continue doing the work we've been doing with yourselves in following and monitoring the work of the SKA, which is a really great project and something that we really need to be proud of as a country, but also following the work of the Astro-Tourism plan. That for me is really exciting. Apologies for that, colleagues. That for me is really exciting. And I truly appreciate the briefing that we have received from colleagues today. What I also would like for us to, apologies, colleagues, I am at home and I'm not alone at home.
So you've muted yourself or your machine has...
I had to mute myself, DG, because I am, as I indicated, I'm at home. I'm not working from the office at this point in time, and I'm not alone at home. And so I keep having to ask people to just respect the fact that I'm still at work on a Friday at this time of the day. I truly apologize for that, colleagues. I also want to thank all of yourselves for availing yourselves this afternoon, to members who've availed themselves this afternoon. Thank you very much. I know we have party commitments. I know Honorable Bosho said he's with the children, the grandchildren. So we want to thank you, Honorable Bosho, for also availing yourself. It's unfortunate, members, we now have to use Friday afternoons for us to do our work because our mornings that we usually have to hold our meetings are now being used for mini plenaries. So thank you very much, honorable members. We'll see each other next week again. I'm glad we've adopted the minutes and the report. I know Honorable Mananiso is always very strict about us ensuring that we adopt minutes and reports. So I'm glad we got to do that at the beginning of the meeting. With that being said, this meeting has come to an end and we will await responses in writing from yourselves as the DSI. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Malibongwe.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.
Malibongwe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Malibongwe. Tintolo Bosho.
Yes, Honorable, let's hear.
Yes, Tintolo.
Hi, Honorable Bosho for Tintolo.
No, you can call me Koos van der Merwe.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, but we had a good debate this morning. It was a good one, I think.
You did, Honorable Boshoff. We had a good debate.
No, thank you. You must have a good weekend. Thank you for this meeting.